Senator Rhiannon.
I direct my question to the Minister representing the Minister for Education, Senator Payne. Considering Mr Pine regularly states that the university sector is behind the Liberal National Plan to take $5 billion out of the higher education budget and allow massive fee increases, please detail the consultation processes your government conducted on this plan. How many of the 1 million students and 140,000 university staff who will be impacted by your higher education changes were consulted? Please detail who, apart from Vice-Chancellors and senior management, you have consulted with. Did you engage in any genuine consultation with students and staff?
The Minister for Human Services representing the Minister for Education, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Rhiannon for her question. In terms of numbers and finer details, Senator Rhiannon, I don't have that here with me this afternoon, but you will of course be aware that over an extended period of time, whether it was the planning for the Commission of Audit under the chairmanship of Tony Shepherd, whether it was the Kemp-Norton review, which the minister undertook as well earlier in the year, whether it was the extensive discussions held before the budget by the minister, by his staff, by the department, there has been very, very significant consultation. But, Mr President, what's even more interesting than that, in fact, is some of the more recent comments made by representative organisations and by individual universities themselves. And it's actually hard to know where to start because there's so many supportive comments available, Mr President. But perhaps if I start with the Regional Universities Network, which considers that, and I quote, "the only way the sector can maintain quality and remain internationally competitive is through the deregulation of student fees." Or Universities Australia, led by Belinda Robinson, of whom we spoke yesterday. The peak body representing Australia's universities calls on the Parliament to support the deregulation of Australian universities with changes to the government's proposals that will assure affordability for students and taxpayers. Ms Robinson has also called on the Parliament to remove the ongoing uncertainty for students, universities and the broader community by moving swiftly to approve the reforms with changes proposed by Universities Australia. I could go on, Mr President, to the Innovative Research Universities. The IRU, in its submission to the Senate inquiry on the bill, urged the Senate to pass the bill with necessary amendments by the end of 2014. The Australian Technology Network of Universities, they welcomed the introduction of the bill into Parliament and, quote, "in a move away from the centralised command and control approach, deregulation will drive diversity and innovation across the sector."
Senator Rhiannon, a supplementary question.
Prior to the last election, Mr Abbott stated that there would be no cuts to education under a coalition government. Before or after the last election, did any senior coalition representatives consult with the National Tertiary Education Union, the National Union of Students, the Council of Australian Postgraduates, the Australian Education Union, the Australian Medical Students, or the National Alliance for Public Universities? If you did not consult, why didn't you? Your answer showed that you have only consulted with Vice-Chancellors. Was there anybody else apart from
Senator
senior
Rhiannon.
management?
The time for asking the question has expired. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And I could reiterate the observations I made in the earlier response in relation to the Kemp-Norton review, in relation to the Commission of Audit, in relation to pre-budget consultations. And to that I can add the exceptionally good work done in the run-up to the introduction of the legislation by the group under the leadership of Professor Dewar, which worked very hard for the minister and in terms of the issues around the legislation, the same as the group led by the exceptional Chancellor of the University of Western Sydney, Professor Peter Shergold, who similarly, in the run-up to the introduction of the legislation, of course, facilitated extensive consultation and discussion. More importantly, Mr President, I think it's a shame that Senator Rhiannon doesn't acknowledge the work of our own Senate committee, chaired by Senator McKenzie, and its review of the legislation recently. Having had a chance to look at that report in recent days since it was tabled, Mr President, I can see the extensive consultation that took place in that process.
Has expired. Senator Rhiannon, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, President. Are you aware that 79% of students surveyed by Sydney University management disagree with university universities being given full flexibility to set fees. So, considering the diverse views on this issue and the enormous importance higher education has for our economy and the nation's future, why didn't the government take the usual path of issuing a green paper to engage widely with the community?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and the Greens are calling for a green paper. There's a surprise. Mr President, what we actually have in this process is higher education spending in this country increasing, going up. That's in stark contrast, let me say, to Labor's $6.6 billion worth of cuts over almost, I think, 18 months at one stage. The majority of Australian students, Mr President, and let me just refer to a poll, if Senator Rhiannon is so interested in polls. Let me refer to the poll which indicates that a survey of more than 1,200 people across the country, commissioned by Universities Australia, which said that 56% of Australians would support the deregulation of universities if the bill proceeded with amendments. Now, we've indicated that that is the view of Universities Australia.
Senator Rhiannon.
Mr President, I draw your attention to Standing Order 174. A senator shall not digress from the subject matter of any question under discussion. There was a clear question there about the green paper. Surely it should be answered.
Order. Thank you, Senator Rhiannon. There were two elements, though, to your question. You did ask, are you aware, in the first part of your question, and then second. And then secondly, you did ask about consultation. And why didn't the government issue a green paper? The minister has been relevant. She has 10 seconds to go. Minister, you have the call.
Thank you very much, Mr President. In that 10 seconds, let me say that the government looks forward to constructive and positive debate on the legislation when it next comes back before the chamber, because the support the government is receiving from the sector is the most relevant concern.
Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Abetz. Can the Minister confirm that Senator Sinodinos has been the longest stood-aside minister since 1901?
That is not a bad record.
Senator Conroy. Order on my left. Order. Both sides. Order. Both sides. The Leader of the Government representing the Prime Minister, Senator Abetz.
Mr President, as a minister that has dedicated himself to assisting the nation rid itself of the carbon tax, the mining tax, getting the budget back into shape, doing all the things that this nation so desperately needs, it will not surprise the viewing public and honourable senators here to learn that no, I have not dedicated my scarce resources on such a silly, frivolous exercise as that undertaken by the Leader of the Opposition in this place. What it shows us, Mr President, how devoid of alternate policies the Australian Labor Party actually is, that the former failed Finance Minister could come in here and ask me, have you bothered to check up who might be the longest stood-aside minister since Federation, is indicative of the policy bankruptcy of the Australian Labor Party, and that is why, Mr President, I can say to the honourable Leader of the Opposition, well may she pursue those issues. She will not have me join her on those silly escapades, because we are devoting ourselves to running the country in a manner that will see benefits flow for the benefit of our fellow Australians. And so, Mr President, you and honourable senators and the viewing public have been given a wonderful window into the difference between the Labor Party's activities in this place and what we as a coalition are doing in this place. We are getting on with the business of government, Mr President. We are fixing the ills that were put to us Mr. President. And, Mr. President, we get this continual interjection from the Leader of the Opposition. And I wonder where she learned that behaviour from, Ladies' College or the CFMEU?
Thank you, Minister. Order on my right. Order on my right. Order. Order on my right. Order. I haven't called you yet, Senator Wong. I haven't called you yet, Senator Wong. Order. Order on my right. Senator McDonald and Senator Collins. Order. Order on my right. Order on my left too. Senator Wong, a supplementary question.
Thank you. I ask a supplementary. Was the press release issued by Treasury last Friday in the name of Senator Sinodinos a signal of the Prime Minister's intention to reinstall Senator Sinodinos as Assistant Treasurer after Parliament rises, or just further evidence of the shambolic and incompetent Abbott government? You can't even get your ministers right.
Minister.
Mr. President.
Order. On my right.
Stephen, you're on the right.
On my right. Order. Minister.
Mr. President, Senator Wong has done the Australian community a great favour, just in case the Australian community was labouring under the misapprehension that this was an infallible government. She has pointed out a fact. She has pointed out the fact that a typographical error occurred on a media release, which I understand has since been corrected. Now, Mr. President, do errors occur from time to time? Yes, they do. And, Mr. President, can I say one of the distinctions between the Australian Labor Party and the left wing of Australian politics and the coalition side of politics is simply this, Mr. President. We accept that there is such a thing as human frailty, that we are not perfect, and when errors occur, we are willing to acknowledge them, apologise for them and correct them, which is exactly what happened in relation to this administrative error.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Wong, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. I ask a further supplementary. Will the Prime Minister make a decision about Senator Sinodinos' ministerial future before or after the Independent Commission Against Corruption hands down its findings into the suspended minister's conduct while Chair of Australian Water Holdings and Treasurer of the New South Wales Liberal Party?
Order. Senator Wong, you've asked your question, and Senator Cormann, you're not assisting. You have asked your question. Interjections are disorderly. Interjections are disorderly. Order, Senator Cormann. Senator Wong. Order, Senator Brandis. Senator Cormann. Order. Senator Cormann. And to you, Senator Conroy. Senator Conroy. Minister.
Mr. President, after all that, I can hardly recall what the question was, but I can, I think, recall that the question was, will the Prime Minister decide before or after?
A point of order, Senator Wong.
Mr. President, I'm very happy to repeat the question if the minister didn't hear the question.
I don't think he needs assistance.
Would he like me to repeat it?
I don't think he does, Senator Wong. Thank you. No. The minister would ask if you needed assistance. Minister.
And so, Mr President, I can confirm to the Leader of the Opposition that the Prime Minister will make a decision before or after. Chances are not at the same time.
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr President. I'm delighted to advise that I do have a question of substance and an issue of national security that does worthy of this place this question time. My question is to the Assistant Minister for Immigration and Border Protection, Senator Cash. Can the minister inform the Senate of any recent reports which highlight the success of the government's border protection policies? Thank you.
The Assistant Minister for Immigration and Border Protection, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Reynolds for her question. And unlike those on the other side, to quote Senator Abetz, we on this side are getting down to business, and in particular in relation to this important portfolio area. What this government is doing that the former government did not do is backing up our commitment with the increased resources and the funding that our agencies need to protect us and to assist in the creation of economic opportunities for all Australians. Senator Reynolds referred to recent reports. I can advise the Senate that the recently released Department of Immigration and Border Protection and the Australian Customs and Border Protection Service annual reports highlight the continued dividends of the Coalition's strong border protection policies. These dividends include that this government is stopping the boats. We have had but one single solitary venture to Australia this year. This compares with the record of those on the other side, where we saw in but 1 month in excess of 4,000 people arrive. And these successful policies, which we have seen this week, continue to be vehemently opposed by those on the other side and by the Australian Greens, are freeing up resources which we on this side of the chamber are responsibly reinvesting back into this important portfolio area. What does this achieve for the Australian people? Well, it achieves greater compliance, it achieves greater integrity, and what it ultimately gives them is strong borders. We have also invested an additional $88 million of funding into customs to increase screening and examination of internal mail, air cargo and sea cargo. What has this delivered? It's delivered an additional 1,700 items being screened, more than what those on the other side did when they were in government. Last financial year, our protection officers prevented around 4 tonnes of drugs and precursors from reaching Australia's
streets. The time for answering the question has expired. Senator Reynolds, a supplementary question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister also advise the Senate of commitments the government has made for further support to the exceptional efforts by our men and women who are delivering our frontline border protection support?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President, and indeed I can. The fine work of our border agency personnel is backed up by a government that actually believes in border protection, but not only that, is prepared to fund our border protection agencies and has the resolve to do what is necessary. The savings that we are making by way of our policies are going to be reinvested back into frontline services. We are reversing the cuts of over $700 million made to our border agencies by those opposite when they were in government. They quite frankly ripped the guts out of customs and border protection. This government is providing an additional $150 million to our border agency, specifically to deal with counter-terrorism activity. Counter-terrorism units have been in operation now for some time. 80 specialised officers are either up and running or are being put into place across the network. This is what happened when you stop the boats.
Thank you, Minister.